Hi, I'm Patricia Malone with CTV News, and joining me now, we heard from Nancy Freeman earlier this week, referring to her daughter who has been stuck at sea on a cruise ship that she works for. And she's been stuck there for quite a while now, and we actually have Emily Freeman as well, her daughter, today to tell us a little bit more about what has been going on. Why don't we start with you, Emily? Just give us a little bit of background about what's happened with you in the last few weeks.
Great. First of all, I just want to say I am going by Ezra.
Okay.
So, yes, professionally I go by Ezra, so everything with the company is now Ezra. But yeah, so the past few weeks I have been moved from the Sky Princess, where I was prepared to be until July 27th, to now I'm on the Emerald Princess, and I've been without passengers since I only had 1 week with passengers on the Sky, and then we were waiting for an answer of what they were going to do with us when Jan Swartz, the CEO of Princess, announced the pause of operations. And then we were waiting it out, in and out of isolation, basically. And then we were moved, all of the North Americans were moved to the Emerald Princess, where we've now been for 2 weeks in isolation in our cabins. We all have balcony cabins, so that's great, but we can only leave our rooms for temperature checks twice a day and for 30-minute meal breaks. And we are essentially waiting out the CDC to allow us back in to our homes.
So you have been basically stuck at port. You are where, right now you are on the Zoom interview, you're located where?
In the Bahamas. We are outside of Nassau, closer to Coco Cay, which is the Royal Caribbean private-owned island. And we are on our way back to Great Isaac Anchorage in the Bahamas, where we've been pretty much since March 12th.
But you have actually been able to make some trips back to the United States at a port in order to get supplies and things, and yet they're not letting you off. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So we've ported in Fort Lauderdale at least twice since the pause of operations has been announced, but Americans have not been able to disembark just because the CDC guidelines are currently not allowing any crew members to disembark on American soil. But we are going back in 2 days. So we're meant to be going back on the 9th. Is that 2 days? My days are all mixed up. But yeah, we're going back. So we're hopeful that we are going to be able to get off the ship then. But honestly, at this point, my expectations are very low.
So today's the 6th. So you're thinking on the 9th on Saturday. On Saturday, you're.
Yes.
So this has been so fluid and changing. I know that, Nancy, this has been an issue for you every time you get set up to do something. What has transpired with you?
Well, we've gotten to the point now where we really don't believe anything that they tell us or tell Emily, because everything changes. And at one point, I was prepared to fly down to Fort Lauderdale, rent a car, and drive her home, because that seemed like the best option to get her. But from what we understand now, that's not a possibility. The CDC is not allowing if and when the crew members get off, they're not allowed to be driven more than 8 hours. So they have to be within 8 hours of either getting off a plane or getting off in Fort Lauderdale. So, and yesterday the Canadians had a plan. Emily, do you want to talk to them a little bit about the plan?
Yeah. I'm like pretty defeated today by like whole demeanor, just because yesterday was like the worst day of this whole experience. And yeah, so yesterday we were meant to port in Nassau in the Bahamas, and there was a charter flight booked for all the Canadians to fly directly from Nassau to Canada. And then because they are not under the CDC, we didn't really expect there to be too much of an issue with this. Like literally the company had paid for their flights, and then they had paid for their flights once they were in Canada to go home, like once they were there. Everything was a done deal, and then the captain announced at 9 a.m. that we were still awaiting clearance from the Bahamian government to allow us to port, because the port of Nassau is closed. So we were hoping for an exception. And they just didn't let us, like they did not allow the ship to port. So all of the Canadians were packed ready to go, thinking it was the end of the line. As an American, like, it doesn't directly affect me, but it seemed like a step in the right direction for this whole nightmare to end. I still believe that Princess is doing everything they can, but at this point, I feel very abandoned by governments, and I feel like they are just looking for any excuse to not allow us in.
So this is basically an issue where the Canadians can't get into their country, the Americans can't get into their country. Now the CDC keeps saying that Princess Cruises hasn't fulfilled all the obligations they need to do, and you're hearing something different.
Well, with the Americans and Canadians, it's a totally different ballgame. So it seems like yesterday, from Canada's side, it was the Canadian embassy that organized the flight. However, it was the government, the Bahamian government, that would not give the ship clearance to port. So it's just a really complicated, there's a lot of powerful people at play here, between the governments, the embassies, both in Canada, in the Bahamas, and then the CDC is its own thing. And the CDC is just US soil. So yesterday's plan seemed great, like a great option for the Canadians, because they skipped the whole ordeal of US soil. So now the Canadians are thinking that they could potentially disembark on Saturday in Fort Lauderdale and then fly home from there.
But what about your
your
situation and the American situation? What's the status of all of that?
There is a very tentative plan for all of the Americans to go on one charter flight on Saturday that will stop throughout the country. But we were told about this plan a few days ago, and we haven't received any updates, but we had to turn in some paperwork saying where we would fly to, who would be picking us up. And then my assumption was that there would then be some check done to make sure that it's not within an 8-hour, like no one's driving further than 8 hours, like my mom said, because that's one of the CDC guidelines that's making this all very difficult. But we had less than 12 hours to figure all of that out. So like, I'm super lucky that one of these stops that's been proposed is Newark in New Jersey, which is well within 8 hours of Maryland, where I'd be going. And that my parents are like the type of people that it's a no-brainer. A lot of people have been really struggling to figure out their travel plans. Because first of all, not everybody lives within 8 hours of some of these stops. So they're having to organize, like they're reaching out to friends saying, hey, I know we haven't maybe talked in a while, but you live within 8 hours of this place and I need to get off a ship. And then I need to quarantine in your house for 2 weeks. Like,
so tell me, go ahead, Nancy.
I was going to say, the problem is that none of us have much confidence that this is actually going to happen. So everybody got their hopes up, and we're ready to go. As soon as we find out she's finding Newark, we'll be on our way. But none of us have any confidence it's going to happen, because there's been so many other plans already that just haven't happened. And the big issue with Canada is that they relied on different governments, whereas with the CDC, we're talking about American citizens and the CDC's, I mean, everything, that seems like that should be so much easier to solve.
So before we close here, now, if this does not transpire on Saturday and you're allowed to dock or to fly in on a charter flight to New Jersey, what happens then? I understand this ship is supposed to be heading out to the Philippines.
Yeah. If this doesn't happen on Saturday, I think this is going to get really ugly. Like, honestly. It's going to get, we're already kind of at our wit's end. Every day, my nerves are a little bit shorter. And I think if this doesn't happen on Saturday, our captain has not confirmed that we would be going with the Emerald Princess. He has not confirmed that we are going to the Philippines, but he has not denied it. And he made an announcement saying that based on where you're from, you'll be moved accordingly. So we kind of assumed there's one ship, as far as we know, that is staying in the Princess fleet that is staying in the Bahamas, and it's the Coral Princess, which currently has cases of COVID-19 on board. So I don't see that as a viable option. There's no way. And there's no way the company would put us there if it's not safe. So I don't know. Now, luckily, we're working with Princess, Holland America, and Carnival, and there's a lot of ships around us right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if I end up on a Carnival ship, which would be kind of cool, not gonna lie. That wouldn't be the worst thing. Just like, it would be interesting to see it for a day, and then I would want to go home. But yeah, so we weren't expecting to receive any crew members from Carnival, but now we have Carnival, Holland America, and Princess crew members all on one ship. And it's hilarious to me that this was meant to be the North American ship, and now we have all of the Indian, Indonesian, Filipino, Korean crew members as well. So it's like, we couldn't be from farther away. And this is we're all consolidated on.
Just to be clear, your ship does not have any COVID-19 positive people on there at this point, and you've been quarantined technically for quite a while.
We've been quarantined for quite a while. No one on this ship has been on land since March 10th. And like we've been on different cruise ships, but nobody has been exposed to anything without this like weird cruise quarantine since March 10th. And we all get our temperatures checked twice a day. There's no coronavirus on the Emerald Princess.
Right. And Nancy, if she ends up getting transported to the Philippines or some other place, what then? Oh, I see your eyes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see my expression. I've been very vocal. I have reached out to a lot of political folks, and there's a lot of people that are pulling for her. And I've maintained a rather calm demeanor because that's my style. But if I have wind that she is going to the Philippines, I think my approach is going to change. I don't know. I just can't even. It's so incomprehensible to me that that would happen that I can't really even believe that it would. But if that is going to happen, I don't know. I can't even imagine. It makes no sense to send this crew halfway around the world when they're right here. So yeah. I'm sure hoping that doesn't happen.
All right.
But on that note, this is pretty significant as well. Yesterday, there were 2 Americans that managed to stay on the Regal Princess. So the Regal docked in Southampton yesterday in the UK. They were able to disembark and fly home. So they're now home because they did the transatlantic crossing to Southampton. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, but I'm sure they're happy to be home at this point. All right, well,
right, and I'm happy for them, but it's crazy.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and please keep us updated. Let us know what happens on Saturday. We're wishing you the best and that you can make it home this time.
Thank you. Hopefully the next time we talk, she'll be home.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.